Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FPC Fantasy Live. My name is Kyle Senra. Here we are for week 10 on November the 12th. Another Sunday with an early game. There's the Colts Patriots game happening now. And we're going to talk about the same topics as every week: fantasy football, start sit decisions. We'll talk about the active and active reports, some later game questionables as well. Did get a lot of clarity yesterday about a lot of players. So I had a lot of notes ready, and then, oh, well, yeah, either players had been ruled out or they were removed from the injury report altogether and should have no concern with them. I'll maybe go through all those players anyway. But yes, as always, I'm here to help out anyone with their questions as well. So if you want to leave a comment in the chat, head over to the Full Press Coverage YouTube page. We're also streaming on Twitch, Facebook. If you want to comment on Twitter, I will check, but there's no guarantee I'll see the message. I'll try to do my best to tag me on at Senra Says. That'll probably be the easiest way for me to see it and guarantee that I'll answer it in some fashion of some sort. But yeah, it's been an interesting week already. A lot of potential returns, right? Like Justin Jefferson just declared designated to return from injured reserve. So the expectation is in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks he will be playing, potentially even sooner, maybe even a week 11 suit up. But I think the 21-day window is now open, so he has to practice. Imagine they wouldn't do that unless they had the intent of playing him and practicing him. So imagine to see Justin Jefferson soon. Justin Fields was maybe expected to play Thursday night. I guess they decided to give it the mini bye week off, and I'd imagine he'll start week 11, but we'll find out. At what time the Justin duo of Jefferson and Fields will return? I know I've got a few fantasy teams that could rely on them. My most important league, I would say, has both. So really would like both to be back if possible. Uh, One thing I will do is I will share my start sit spreadsheet with you as well. So you'll see that on the screen. And from there, as I mentioned, I'll go through the active and active reports once those have been made available. From there, I'll just read out like who's in, out kind of thing. And then the later questionable. So sometimes that's the 4 p.m. Eastern games or even Sunday night or Monday night games. We have questionable players. What are some options to look at that you can replace? If you want to hold those players in lineups, if they're high enough upside players, you want to take the chance on them. Always have a backup ready just in case for those games. What I always do sometimes is even just out of the blue randomly, okay, this Monday night player, they're not at all, but I might just pick up another Monday night player just in case. News Monday that, oh yeah, this player. So they, uh, they injured themselves during the day somehow, and they can't play. And you have to either drop them or you don't have anyone. Maybe you've got a player on bye that you don't mind dropping for that. But for the most part, that can be kind of tricky. So if you can prepare yourself, if you've got enough bench spots to just always hold a Monday night player randomly, you want to pick them up and the best available player possible that's available on Monday. But the ups that just the chance that someone could get hurt and reference sake, did you probably get the piece of paper with the handy before, but the news that Stephon Diggs was going to be out. So it looked like Friday injured back in practice some way, but then fully practiced and was removed from the injury report. So there's no worry there. But I know a couple leagues I went and I picked up Deontay Hardy or Trent Sherfield just to have in case. You get more news and, oh yeah, he ends up trending towards that way anyway. So I'm just still holding him. I'd rather play Diggs, obviously. So happy to hear that he will be active. So I know in one particular league that the stretch decisions, I was going to kind of change how I make my decision this week. I have to open myself up to more players that I don't necessarily want to, in order to essentially hold Gabe Davis as the backup. I've got both Diggs and Gabe Davis on this team. Sometimes I want to play both of them. This was a week where I was actually planning to play both of them. Davis is kind of like that. You kind of have to pick the matchups, but most of the time so boom bust that Gabe Davis, you kind of just almost all. I mean, Diggs is always locked in the lineup, but uh, Davis, you want to maybe want to, even if there's times to say, oh, I wouldn't necessarily want to play him. You might want to anyway because the upside is so. high, yes, if you just every week you capture his core games, but you also capture all of his boom that sometimes help you win. So I didn't want to bench Gabe Davis and hold him as the backup to Diggs, but I was going to. The news that Diggs is active, well, that gives me flexibility. I'll just play Gabe Davis. So then we'll see it. I'll show it later in the start sit spreadsheet. There was a league where it would have been two of these three players. I just have to pick from the best. So it's a little bit better when you're in those kind of less than ideal scenarios to start somebody. I'd rather just play Gabe Davis over them. So some later game inactives, or not inactives, but questionable. Uh, DK Metcalf, I guess, was questionable, but it seems like he's also been removed from the injury report. I know one league I was holding Jahan Dotson like backup, leaving enough. Another spot was Johnny Smith as like the main backup guy, just in case for DK. Or, and we'll see as we get to it. Maybe I think that's I mean, actually, yeah, never mind. Devontae Turpin, that's an interesting one for Dallas. They play at 425. So like I've one league, it's a tight end premium league. Turpin's kind of maybe on the not the must start, but he has been getting targets, and this looks like to be a great matchup. At least you know, not rely on the heavy hitters. You don't have to do CDM 15 targets. We'll spread it out more because the Cowboys are expected to blow out the Giants. However, he's questionable, so maybe that's also proof that okay, well, we don't necessarily need him, so we may not play him. So I don't know if Monte Turpin's counts as one of those players, but because it's tight end premium league, I've got Donald Parham as kind of a backup option in case. I think the key there is, especially for that, like if again, if DK Metcalf was questionable and I had to replace John Smith, put these players in flex spots, the questionable players or the later game, as many options. A few questionable players that will get news soon on are like Robert Woods, TJ Hawkins, and Jamar Chase. Those are all 1 p.m. Eastern players. So I did still listen them up for myself. What I do is I go to my leagues and any player that's questionable, I write them down. How many leagues is it? Who is the player I'm planning to replace them with? I want to know that all in advance. That way, once I get off the stream and I see the actives and actives and I my lineups, I don't want to be having to like spend tons of time on each week making decisions. I want those decisions to be made. I'm simply setting and like just doing the final check on the lineup. Everything I've kind of already decided. Now, uh, any player that's out, pull them out, and players in. I already know which players. It's just making a list of because a lot of times I'm holding guys like Mitchell and Hawkinson, of course Chase in lineup starting. Robert Woods not so much. I think I got one where I've got him started. So got to go check that. Got some news like yesterday that Nico Collins is out. So Dennis will get the start. That will again. May as well just everything leaning towards that anyway. Nico Collins out, meaning more targets to go to Noah Brown, of course, Tank Dell, Robert Woods if he's active. And I guess I'm voting for Robert Woods is Mechie just to have exposure to that Texans offense. If Woods is out, Mechie kind of looks like the number 3 wide receiver for the Texans. I mean, they had 3 wide receiver ones last week. I'm not saying that that's going to repeat this week, but that third wide receiver option certainly is viable. And that's with a tight end also finishing like he was top. He might have been Dalton Schultz might have been tight end 1 last week. So he had 4 options that just smashed. Maybe I didn't do anything, but yeah. Well, I guess that's where we're going to start actually talking about a start sit spreadsheet. So as you can see from the top, Devin Singleton. The Texans now lead back this week again with Damian Pierce out. So deciding between him and Kadarius Hodge. Now, the one other thing I guess I could even get to before we can get to the spreadsheet is kind of the process. And what I'll usually do is I'll go through Friday, try and figure out, okay, what are the decisions I need to make? I've got all these guys that are automatic starters, then the kind of questionable starters. Okay, who are those players? How many are there per league? Which leagues have them, first off? And also, who are the players I'm deciding between? I kind of together. I want to visually see. What I've noticed is I'm deciding a lot of Kadarius Hodge and Jefferson. There's a lot of decisions I'm making. Johnny Smith, players involved in this more of the puzzle in Arizona for this top. Devin Hodge. I also activated James Conner off IR. I thought this was to not play him. I wanna see what he looks like. Him, it's his first week back. Howard's his first week back. There's so many changes with the offense. So much uncertainty. I didn't necessarily wanna jump into that situation. There is an inherent advantage with James Conner in the sense of making this decision, which, you'll see here, the name of the league just so I can easily identify back and check. I'm prepping the spreadsheet. Um, but also, the names of the players. In blue, I'll put the player I've decided to start. In orange, the players I've decided to bench. Now, their opponent is listed here. Also put all these categories. So the players' fantasy points per game average, the lowest they've scored all season, the highest they've scored all season, and then their projected points total on the website for each fantasy week uh, projection. And that gives me 4 production points. So 4 points about the player's production itself, and really one about the player's opportunity, targets per game. And then looking here, it's more about the team itself, or it's both. A lot of this is both. The defensive ranking points allowed for that opponent. So for Singletary, it's the Bengals. For Hodge, it's the Cardinals. The points that they've allowed to that position. Bengals defense has allowed the 17th, my list fewest. So 17th fewest fantasy points to running backs, while Arizona has allowed the 21st fewest fantasy points to uh, wide receivers. They're both close. Technically, the better matchup. Actually, I got this wrong. The better matchup actually should be Hodge. I messed this one up. Oops. Which is part of the thinking of why I'd want to maybe go in that direction of Kadarius Hodge. But yeah, so 21st fewest, meaning they've allowed the 12th most to wide receivers. That is Arizona. Cincinnati has allowed the 16th most fantasy points. Technically, it is a better matchup for the Atlanta wide receiver, but not both are below the halfway mark. So these are still above average technically matchups. We also have the odds makers, implied total and the over under. So the implied total is the team total that they give. That's calculated based off the over under they get and also the spread, the point spread between the two teams. So I've got the game over under, but also the individual team implied total. And then my goal line guide article can be consulted on fullpresscoverage.com. The goal line grade that I put out for each team's rushing and passing offenses. So if it's a running back, I use the rushing grade. If it's any other position, I'll use the passing grade. And the goal line grade difference between the rushing and passing, and if it's positive or negative. So I'll just say here, Edge Hodge is the goal line grade is higher, 2.5 for the passing grade for the Falcons, 55.25 for the Texans running goal line grade. So just on the grade itself alone, it's higher for the Falcons, but then also the difference between that own team's rushing goal and passing grade. So for instance here, this minus 32 means the Texans rushing grade is 32 points lower than their passing grade. So it's a positive step here for Hodge, even though it's a negative goal line differential. I believe the rushing grade is 76.5. Passing, or the passing grade is 72.5. So it does give Hodge a -4, but that goal line differential is a lot better than a -32. That's where I really think the difference is a likelihood of touchdowns being scored in one direction or the other. So all to say, Singletary doesn't pose much upside from a sense because I don't know that there's a high touchdown chance with him. I think there's a huge touchdown chance with Hodge, but slightly better chance. Anyway, I am leaning Hodge for a few reasons. So, yeah, Singletary's average better, but if you also count just the last 2 weeks where Hodge has really come on, his average would be higher than the 6.21. Both ceilings are like neither have hit 12 points yet this year. So, and like I was saying with the touchdown upside, I technically gave this point to Singletary. His best performance this year is 11.89. Hodge is 11.25. Their onside projection does give Singletary 9.44, better than last week. It's a better matchup than last week. Bucks defense, Bengals defense, still tough run defense. Hodge isn't projected for much, though 5.07. So sizable edge in terms of the projection this week for Singletary based on the volume he's expected to receive. Now, targets per game, there's difference, but this is also comparing to a running back. I find this one is more It's better when you're comparing all players to the same position. That's really fair just to look at it. While it is technically a towards Hodge, I also feel like necessarily not that much. I want involvement in the passing game, and especially in this league scoring settings, Dynasty Trades and Q, Dynasty and Chill combined league. Um, it's a PPR league, it's a tiered PPR league. So, uh, full point PPR for running back. Wide receivers get 1.25 points per reception, and tight ends it's 1.7. Uh, so again, the emphasis on volume to a certain extent. So having more targets for Hodge is an edge, but not a significant one because again, comparing a wide receiver to a running back, all of or most of the team stuff goes towards a Hodge. Again, the defensive matchup is slightly better. The implied total is slightly higher. I'm at 1.25 points though, so not a huge edge, but enough. The over under is a lot bigger. And part of that is the Falcons are favored against the Cardinals. The Texans are not. They're underdogs. They're the Bengals are expected to score some points that lifts that over under up. So now it's not technically a good game script for Singletary. So while I gave it a bonus, like a green mark for the best in each category, it isn't technically that important for him. Um, uh, what you'd want is the higher implied total for the running back because they're leading, get more volume carries wise. So this type of game script does, shootout type favor the receiver. Now it's not a good game script for Hodge either, because again, for receiver, you'd want the opposite. You'd want them to be in Singletary's situation where their team is behind and scoring leads almost like a shootout. The Falcons are expected to win. Maybe that's more rush attempts, less pass attempts. So the one edge is Singletary is technically in the past has been a receiving back. He is not in this season. Again, 1.4 per game. I did not expect that from him. I expected he would have some goals pass catcher. Maybe with the injuries to receivers today, that helps him. But so far, that hasn't been the case. And then again, for touchdown chances with the goal line guide and the goal line grade differential, both favor Kadero Hodge. So all to say that's really three main categories. Really, it's just these two categories where it's significant edge. All three of these really are more slimmer margin edges. Now overall, that is more categories where Hodge leads. Even this average doesn't necessarily apply. Like when I single it down to like what are the most important categories, Singletary's projected volume today is a big reason why I play him. A game just having so many points is a big reason why, but the goal line touchdown chances certainly factor in favor for Hodge in a significant manner. And you have the other factors. He has been in the past. Uh, the slightly better matchup, the slightly better team implied total, kind of goes against Singletary's ceiling and also his average total. I think I'm leaning Hodge, and part of this also give me the flexibility because the Falcons play later at 4:25 slot. I could play Hodge and still hold the chance to play Connor and decide to switch them out later. I can decide at 4 o'clock after some players have played like kind of what I need ceiling floor wise. Maybe have more information on Connor, what to workload wise, and maybe I can make that decision. So I am leaning towards Kadero Hodge, the upper Singletary. Gonna go Daryl Hodge over Van Jefferson. This was interesting. Same players on the same team. So I'm really just looking at the stats because the defense of the rank, the implied totally over the goal lines. But all these two players really at the same position. So like the defensive rank too. Compared to wide receiver, tight end, might be a difference here. But Daryl Hodge seems like the better option than Van Jefferson. Part of it is the scheme. Van Jefferson, with all the targets he's getting, 3.5 targets per game, which is nice, hasn't it hit 7 in this scoring setting, yet he's forward money. Still not as good of a projection as Hodge. So I think Hodge is the better option there. Van Jefferson versus Jamal Agnew versus Trent Irwin. Uh, this one, this is a multiple player decision. These players have to start one. In green, I'll mark the best of each category, worst. You see here is kind of counts the total of each uh, -3 for Van Jefferson. All the production metrics, average, floor, ceiling, although the floor almost shouldn't count because none of them, like all of the floors, are easier. But even if you were to take them, actually, yeah, still Trent Irwin would still look the best bench at first. His ceiling, again, hasn't put together a good ceiling performance when you're at the back end bench, you're really looking the targets per game is nice, but he's not doing enough with it. Nothing that makes him playable. All Agnew's good. Ag's goal line guide is the worst. It's second worst passing grade of the week. It's might be like the third worst minus 41. Their implied total against the 49ers defense isn't good. There's some production things that fall into Agnew's favor. There's some team things and the matchup that don't quite match up. Targets per game is what all has used. Irving's kind of been in the middle. The games where he's been needed, he's also put up high ceilings when T. Higgins has been out. He's shown that have that ceiling. All of the implied totals, the over/under, the goal line grades, the only one with a positive goal line differential. Trent Irwin seemed like a good decision there over Van Jefferson, Jamal Agnew. This is what I was talking about earlier, this money ballers, where if I had to take out Gabe Davis, I would have had to play two of these guys, Algier, Justice Hill, Jamal Williams. Happily, I get to just play Algier, which seemed like a pretty easy decision. He's got all the production metrics. He had that two touchdown game. He's got all the aspects to it. Justice Hill had a two touchdown game. He had 12 points. Tyler Algier's two touchdown game was 22 points. So certainly, if the ceiling is hitting multiple touchdowns, he'll basically just do that. Like he's just gonna like it's still like two touchdowns, 12 points, and not even a full 10 yards to get two goal line carries, and he scored both. Algier will be more involved. Higher projection as well. The targets per game is none of them are great. Technically, Hill's actually just narrowly ahead of Algier. The matchup's great too. Cardinals, Falcons, Cardinals game. So many decisions center on that. The goal line grade stuff. It wasn't great. The Ravens have the highest goal line grade of the week. This would hinge on Keaton Mitchell. If Keaton goes out, maybe I flip towards Justice Hill. I feel like he is kind of the third guy, so maybe he won't be able to take advantage of this uh, this really high goal line grade, but also this incredible goal line guy differential favoring the run game. So Ravens rushing touchdowns happened a lot last week. I think it could repeat again, especially against this Browns. But part of that is the reason this goal line grade is so high is the Browns pass defense have not allowed any goal line passing touchdowns yet. I think they allowed like four rushing touchdowns inside the five. So really the weaker spot. Not if you want to play Hill over Algier. I'm going to stick with Tyler Algier. Seems like a good match for the Cardinals. Zach Moss versus Jamal Williams. I guess this was already made. I made Zach Moss this morning. I don't love it for either. Second RB spot on the team. At that league, I'm really high wide receivers. Pretty thin at running back. Pure RB with Rashad White. Trying to find a suitable RB2 every week. Zach Moss. Great to start the season. So hopefully, I can find a better option. Ty Conklin versus Noah Fant. Ty Conklin came out ahead in those scenarios as well. This one league was still probably my most difficult one. Trent Irwin versus Johnny Smith versus Khalil Shakir. Because again, I can't get away from this Cardinals game. Heck, this Texans Bengals game. So many decisions center around it. So the first thing that became obvious. I think I'm leaning towards Khalil Shakir right now, but still not for sure certain. But again, marking each color. One thing I noticed was the implied totals. Both the Bills and the Bengals had the same implied total. This is to start the week at 27.25. Maybe those lines have shifted by now. And basically the same over-under. So I've given the edge slightly to Irwin here in both instances and as well, but I would like me to say it's not a major. The big wins here are Johnny Smith, just his production. All of them have a floor of 0. That neutralizes, but Johnny Smith's average is better. He's been more involved consistently in passing games, more targets. He's had a higher projection as a result. He also put up the best week so far, 24-point fantasy week, which came his ability to score from distance, big yards with the touchdown. He gets that high ceiling. Also, a lot of negatives against it, though. The Falcons have the lowest implied total of these three teams. Right? Bengals, Bills. You want to invest in that or the Falcons? Lowest over under. The goal line guide differential is a -4, which isn't too bad, but it's when we're talking comparing to like Singletary earlier, like Daryl Hodge Singletary, it was a positive. But the same goal line grade differential is a negative in this case. So it's all context of the matchup players you're comparing to. That's really where the Bills high goal line grade, high goal line differential handy for Shakir to have an edge. So he has three categories where he's the best, having the best matchup. Allowed. the pass catching positions here, and these 2 goal line guide, markers. The lowest are his targets per game, which are almost identical to Irwin's, so it's about opportunity. It seems like Stephon Diggs is gonna play, so maybe Shakir is the best option, but, his protection is slightly lower than Irwin's. Um, but yeah, Irwin's in this case ended up being the worst option, whereas in this other league, he was the best out of Van Jefferson and Jordan Agnew. So I'm really deciding with a tight end premium scoring, either go with the tight end and Jonnu Smith or play Khalil Shakir. Haven't fully decided yet. Again, I am leaning towards Shakir. I think what I did here was I took, this is without these taken into account, and this second score was with these taken into account. In both instances, like I mentioned earlier, Khalil Shakir was the higher, Irwin was the lower. So the easiest thing there was to bench Irwin and then decide between Jonnu Smith, Khalil Shakir. This is another thing where I can now decide. I can wait till 4:25 and decide that. But yeah, that's my start sit spreadsheet. It's kind of what I go through every week and kind of making my start sit decisions. Yeah, and right now we'll get to everyone else's questions, and hopefully I can help people out in terms of how I come to my decision. Now I'm gonna kind of like make on the spot decisions, but I've also done a lot. So let's see what we got here. Thank you, Nathan, for watching. Morning. Please pick one to start between Joe Mixon, Brees Hall, and James Cook. Standard league. I'm already planning on starting Monty and Eckler. Hmm. Well, I would say I think I like James Cook the least. Um, so it'd be between Brees Hall and Mixon. I'm pretty sure I've got Brees Hall ranked higher. I will go pull up my rankings. So I'll go pull up the standard rankings. Quickly about Fantasy Pros, and you can create one rankings and it'll adjust all of them as you make those changes. So in standard, I have I've got Eckler at 8. I have Brees Hall at 11. I have Joe Mixon 13, and I have David Montgomery 16th. Now, it is a good matchup against the Chargers, so I won't tell you to not play Monty if you've considered him your strongest starter. I think, slight difference, Mixon 13, Montgomery 16, like 3 spots difference. Still the RB2 range, so I can't fault you for playing Monty over Mixon or going either direction. But yeah, I would play Brees Hall. I think it's the Raiders. It's like that game, and another take this out of the equation, suddenly you can reevaluate this tonight, see what you need for ceiling. Although I feel like Brees Hall probably gives you the best of both. I would go with Brees Hall, but it also gives you some flexibility that you can reassess tonight and decide between Brees Hall Sunday night or James Cook Monday. But again, I would probably lean Brees Hall. Really, either stance, because the reason you'd want to wait is to decide, do I need more floor, do I need more ceiling? Gives me a sense of I need. But most likely, Hall is the better floor in either instance. Go with Brees Hall. And Joel back again. Uh, would you put in Lamar or Dak? Thanks, Joel. Great show as always. So earlier mentioned the Ravens high goal line grade. There's been twice where they've had the highest rushing goal line season I've started since week 5, 4 weeks before I started implementing all that data. But in the last, I guess this is now last 5 weeks, week 6 of it, we've already had 2 previous instances where the Ravens have the highest rushing goal line grade. In one of those, I believe Lamar was a top 5 quarterback, and the other one was last week where everything went to Gus Edwards. So there is a chance in those high rushing goal line grade matches that, yeah, Lamar gets shut out of the passing game, especially against the Browns. And if he doesn't score the rushing touchdown, he really doesn't have the ceiling. We've also seen instances where those high rushing goal line grades have led to a high ceiling game. He's scored a touchdown. So as a result, I've got Lamar actually as my QB1 this week, even though it's a really tough matchup passing wise against the Browns. And take advantage of that on the ground. He's running for 100 yards. He's rushing, getting a rushing touchdown, really hitting that high ceiling as you need as a quarterback. I like Dak against the Giants. I think we have some history though. We saw Dak play the Giants week 1. I guess we have seen Lamar play the Browns this year. So let me check both games, game logs for that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Last time Lamar played the Browns, He put up 28 fantasy points and was the QB4. He actually threw 4 touchdowns against this, like, incredible pass defense. It seems like he was good enough. 4 touchdowns on 19 passes. He was incredibly efficient. I don't expect that type of efficiency, and maybe if he's not scoring 4 passing touchdowns, again, maybe he complements with a rushing touchdown. Yeah, he was QB4 last time he played the Browns. When Dak played the Giants, he scored 6 fantasy points, was the QB 29 because they won 40 to nothing. He actually threw more. He threw 24 pass attempts, but was 13 for 24. Didn't throw a touchdown, only threw for 143 yards. So we got these same scenarios with these same teams, and in those instances, Lamar just smashed Dak. I think it'll be closer this week. But yeah, Lamar finishing as a top 5 option last time against the Browns gives me full confidence ranking him as the QB1 this week. So frankly, Joel, if you're asking me between Lamar and any quarterback this week, it's Lamar. It's Lamar over Josh Allen. It's Lamar over Burrow. I've got his QBs 2 and 3. Goff is 4, Herbert's 5. And yeah, Dak is QB7 in my ranking, just behind CJ Stroud. I love those shootout type matches. Lamar and Josh Allen, and then it's the two quarterbacks playing against each other. Burrow, Goff, Herbert, Stroud, Bengals, Texans, Lions. I think those games will be shootouts, so I put all 4 of those quarterbacks in the top 6, as well as Lamar and Josh Allen. Dak falls just behind. He's got the lowest passing goal line grade of any of those guys. So I would go with Lamar Jackson. All right, so we are at 12 noon, and that means all of the active and inactive reports should be put out. So I'm going to look that up real quick, and we'll share that all with you so we get final confirmation on some of these questionable players. All right, well, since we're talking so much about the Ravens, I guess alphabetically we'll start there anyway. Tylan Wallace is inactive for the Ravens. Forgot he was on. So is Josh Johnson at quarterback. Nothing major here. It looks like they've got most of the offensive line back and healthy. Ronnie Staley. I remember that was a thing early in the season where it seems like left tackles were just inactive. Week 2, there were like 5 or 6 starting left tackles, all kind of questionable, and all of them were. Yeah, so nothing major for the Ravens. Looks like they'll be a full go for the whole team. Cincinnati, though, this is the big question. They announced T. Higgins was out yesterday, and today they have announced Jamar Chase is active. He is not on the inactive report, so Jamar Chase is playing today. He's clearly not 100%, but how close to 100% we don't know. How limited will be, we really don't know. I've only got him in 1 league. I'm starting him. Like especially if you only have him in 1 league, I feel like you have to start him. If he goes off, you don't want to see that to 0. If you've got him in multiple leagues, that's when you can maybe I can justify benching in one spot. I'll still capture the points in the other leagues. I could still be happy, but I have a hard time envisioning a scenario where the guy I've got ranked as my wide receiver 2 this week ends up on the bench. So Jamar Chase to me must start. No Higgins though. I do like Tyler Boyd. I'll still play Irwin in spots. Earlier I was mentioning it's between Jamal Agnew, Van Jefferson, Trent Irwin. I'll stick with the high offense with Irwin. With Higgins out, I'll go with him there. But not necessarily forcing him into tunnel. All right, so the Cleveland Browns now. David Bell, Marquise Goodwin, both inactive. Bell, it's been a healthy scratch. It seems like it's been either him, was the rookie last year, or Cedric Tillman, the rookie this year, who's kind of been alternating between like who's been healthy and who's been out. It seems like Tillman has gone ahead of Bell and in the line scratch. Marquise Goodwin does seem like that's an injury. He was kind of elevated to the wide receiver 3 on the team when Donovan Peoples-Jones traded away. Now, they also didn't really use Donovan Peoples-Jones when he was the wide receiver 3, so I don't know that would have mattered too much, but Cedric Tillman, I suppose, would be that 3rd receiver. Tough matchup against the Ravens, so I would look to avoid that anyway. Cooper's for sure starting. Elijah Moore, I think, can be started as well. Joku, I'm hesitant with. I've looked for other options at tight end. If you don't have any, then you might have to play him. I think it is easy to obtain enough options though at tight end. Like if you can get John Smith, yeah, play John. And then yeah, all 3 running backs are active. Pierre Strong will be there as the 3rd guy, but it'll really be a mean split between Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. I believe I still have Kareem Hunt. Let me just look at that real quick. Where do I have? Well, I've got Ford at RB29, Kareem Hunt at RB23. So, yeah, I still do have Kareem Hunt higher than Ford. I'm not sure that's gonna be the case, even 23 seems high. I've got him, yeah. Probably would put Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of Kareem Hunt. So I'm gonna make that switch real quick this morning. Um, yeah, probably Gibbs at RB21 makes sense. 5 spots behind Montgomery. Yeah, that seems like that's good there. Yeah, so Hunt still though, 24 seems right to me. So yeah, I'm thinking still an RB2 and in that more than that RB3 range, but I could definitely see that reverse. I'd still consider playing both. For the Packers, the only offensive player of note is Samari Toure at wide receiver active. Of note is I think he's got like less than 10 targets. Um, Caleb Jones at tackle is also inactive, but that means Josh Nijman and Rasheed Walker, both of the guys who've been flipping at left tackle since Bakhtiari's been out. They're both active. Last week, Josh Nijman got the start. I'd imagine that's the case again. He seemed to be playing well, and the only reason he got injured in the game. That's why Rasheed Walker took back over. So Josh Nijman's healthy. I'd imagine he starts. The injuries for the Packers, the big ones are on the defense. Quay Walker at linebacker still out this week. Isaiah McDuffie would be the starter. And then Jair Alexander at cornerback is out. So no Jair, no Russell Douglas, Eric still out on injured reserve. There are three main playing in this game. So maybe it's a bit of a boost for the Steelers. I believe I've got both Deontay Johnson and George Pickens ranked inside top. Let's see this here. Yeah, they're both inside the top 26 receivers. I've got Deontay at wide receiver 20, George Pickens at wide receiver 26. So yeah, I think definitely want to play both of them. I think my tight end 30 is Connor Hayward, the Steelers tight end, so not so much about him, but those main two for sure. Moving on, Houston Texans. So they've already announced these yesterday, but I'll repeat them again. Nico Collins at wide receiver and Damian Pierce at running back are both out. But Robert Woods is active, so he'll be, I presume, the third wide receiver in those the Texans formation. The two I'd be more aggressive to play though are for sure Tank Dell, who I have Tank Dell super high this week. I've got him at wide receiver 10, so I'm all in on Tank Dell for this week. Noah Brown is my wide receiver, just behind Pickens, 2 spots. Wide receiver 28 for Noah Brown. Definitely 2 really strong starts this week. Robert Woods, though, I think still playing at times. Jacksonville, Zay Jones is inactive again. He hasn't played, I think, since week 2. Keep thinking, oh, might come play, and then each week he just continues to not. So I don't think they put him on IR. Seeming now they probably should have, to be honest. I think they expected this wouldn't be as long. And so yeah, I don't know if you mean Jamal Agnew. I already showed my start sit decision spreadsheet. I wouldn't consider playing him. I mean, I considered playing him, but I mean, if I prefer Trent Irwin. So it'll be a pretty high threshold of like how deep you have to go to play Jamal Agnew. Where do I have him ranked exactly? Just to give some context. Agnew. I don't even see him. Did I forget to rank him this week? I felt like I ranked him. I mean, I don't want to waste too much time on that. I believe he's in the 60s somewhere. Um, Moving on to the Vikings. So KJ Osborne has been announced out. That leaves likely Brandon Powell as the Vikings receiver opposite Jordan. TJ Hawkinson, however, is active. There was some question behind that. So I still have Hawkinson this week ranked as the tight end 1. Josh Dobbs. If it would have been Jaron Hall, yeah, no, not so much. I would have preferred Andrews with Josh Dobbs there. Hawkinson to Andrews. Dobbs to Hawkinson should be as good as Lamar to Andrews. Again, we're doing so much on the ground. Preferred the passing upside. So yeah, full go on Hawkinson. Um, full go on Addison too, to be honest. And yeah, you can certainly play Brandon Powell. I think definitely an option. New Orleans Saints. Andre Miller is inactive. I think they announced that yesterday. And then Jimmy Graham at tight ends inactive, which has been the case since Juwan Johnson's been back. It seems like if you play him, and you want to play as Taysom Hill, so go ahead. I don't have that on any team. So I don't know. It's tough context to know, like at what point you're playing him, like even where to rank. Looking at the Steelers again, playing the Packers. It's funny, not too much on offense of note that's inactive. Godwin Ikwebuike. at running back. I knew he played for the Lions. I had no idea he was on the Steelers, but he's inactive for them. But yeah, Minka Fitzpatrick's out. I do think that sets up really nicely for Reed in the slot for the Packers. And he might I have him ranked the highest of any Packers receiver this week. So I think that's a really good matchup. 49ers, nothing of note in terms of major players inactive. Tyrion Davis-Price at running back is an offensive player, but he's been the 4th running back all year. Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell ahead of them. Even the last few weeks, Jordan Mason's active every week. Christian McCaffrey's the guy. For the Buccaneers, Keyshawn Vaughn is inactive at running. So that's Chase Edmonds as the number 2, and I guess Sean Tucker coming in at the number 3, but imagine most of the work. I mean, it's a tough match against the Titans, but most of that work would go to Rachaad White. Him as a pass catcher might be more fantasy utility. For the Titans, Ryan Tannehill is inactive, so Malik Willis will still operate as the backup behind Will Levis, and then Treylon Burks is inactive. So Nick Westbrook would, I suppose, maintain his role he has had in the last couple weeks as the number 2 wide receiver for the Titans. But yeah, that goes through the whole active list. We got yeah, we're basically 3 minutes left in the stream, so just checking Twitter real quick to see if anyone has any questions. Do appreciate Nathan and Joel for coming in. Repeat again. Nathan asking about Mixon, Brees Hall, James Cook, and the league. Play one of them. They're already starting. David Montgomery, yeah. Actually, the more I think about it in standard, it makes sense to go with Montgomery over Mixon. It's changed my rankings to reflect it. I guess I'm just a little hesitant wise ranking Montgomery that high because the first game off the entry, but yeah, stacking both in that matchup and Eckler, who well, he's a pass catching back. It's not even so much the volume; it's the fact that with pass catching he can catch touchdowns. Last week, I guess he didn't really do that. He touchdowns. So the touchdown upside with Eckler is what you want to chase the standard. So playing those, I think it makes a ton of sense to as well. In fact, I would even say he's the stronger start to me than Monty. Decision is more Monty. Yeah, I definitely like going Brees Hall, Monty. That makes a ton of sense in the standard league. And then Joel's asking about Lamar Jackson versus Dak Prescott. I have both as top 7 quarterbacks, but I have Lamar Jackson ranked as QB1 this week, even in spite of a tough match with the Browns. And last time he played for a couple of big guns like Jalen Hurts, who aren't in, so good, production against the Browns, 4 passing touchdowns, maybe not rushing or touchdown or 2 in there. He can certainly achieve that QB1. So, I know it wasn't good last week with a high rushing potential. He just didn't get the rushing touchdown. Went to Gus Edwards, went to Pete Mitchell, 3 rushing touchdowns right there. One of them goes to Lamar. He's scored 17 points instead of 11. So scores 2. Man, then you're really rolling in the 20-point totals. And I believe without a passing touchdown. Or 4 against the Browns last time. I don't think he's going to get out in that regard again. So as much as the Cowboys are expected to put up points against the Giants, that blowout style could be a heavy run game, not pass attempt. A little scared of the game script, not enough to rank him low. Again, Dak's QB7, but I've got Lamar QB1. And basically, with 1 minute to go, or even less, I'll get ended here. This episode of Full Press Fantasy Live. And I'm Kyle Slimer. You can follow me on Twitter, as Slimer says. I also host Full Press Packers pod. We'll start that. That'll be the next episode out. I will record a reaction pod to the Steelers game later today. So that should actually be out tonight. Coverage podcast network. Also, be Full Press Fantasy. More relevant people watching this game at FPC_fantasy pod. My co-host Brad Harvey and I every week we kind of weekly breakdowns. A lot of times the highest implied totals, the lowest over-unders, the odds makers lines. I look at my goal line guide as well. We'll talk rankings, the number 1 players on each of our rankings, the biggest differences in our rankings, the biggest differences against consensus, some other topics if we want to bring stuff up. And yeah, that's all for me this morning. I want to thank everyone, Nathan, Joel, everyone listening, watching, everyone who supports every week. Appreciate that. Yeah, I'm Kyle Senra, and this was the Week 10 edition of FPC Fantasy Live. Have a great fantasy